I'm going to demo my quick little method of doing card sharpening. So basically, for those of you who don't know, the way you use a card scraper is you want to have just all it is a flexible piece of metal, right? And you just want to put a burr basically on an edge, and that burr it's a little bit T-shaped, and basically that burr is sharp enough that you can scrape wood with it, and it's great. It's a great way to finish wood. It's not going to take off a lot of material, but it'll remove tear out or plane tracks, and it's very easy to use, and I think it works faster than sandpaper if you for things like that. So it's very versatile. So basically, in order to create that burr, you first take a mill file and you just take off the old edge. You just want to get down to the metal, so that square metal, so that you want this to start off being very square. Okay, 90 degrees isn't important, but you want it to be nice and straight and clean, because basically that corner, that edge formed by the corner, you want that to be a nice clean line, so that when you pull it over into a burr, it doesn't have nicks in it, and it'll be nice and smooth. So the first step is mill file. Just take off whatever was there before, make it nice and flat and true. Then generally people want to sharpen it in some fashion, which is basically making every surface nice and smooth. Some people use water stones. I find water stones to be a little bit messy, but they're perfectly fine using them. No problem using water stones in this fashion, right? It's a little bit trickier when you try to use a water stone to get that edge, because you're going to have a tendency to cut into your stone. So you have to kind of, anyways, I avoid that altogether by using these little mini diamond plate paddles. So there's a coarse, medium, and a fine, and they're nice and small, handheld, and I can just basically freehand it and just clean up that edge, polish it up so it's nice and shiny. Then, once you have that nice and square, then you take a burnishing tool, which is just basically hardened steel, and you run it across the edge, and then you put a little bit of an angle on it, and you basically just pull that edge down a little bit. Kind of flares a little bit and makes that burr. That's it, that's all you need. So, I'm just gonna run through this real quick. So the first thing I'm gonna do, this is a little jig that I got from Lee Valley, I guess. It just makes it easier to hold the mill file. Honestly, I think you could do it freehand if you really wanted to, but most everybody uses a jig of some sort. And again, I don't think it really has to be perfectly 90 degrees. You just want it to be consistent, right? So I'm just gonna over here, because I'm right-handed. So I'm just gonna take off that old edge. If you were to look at it, you can see that it's shiny because I've used it, right? So the only thing that's really damaged are these two edges on either side. I want to take all that off. So I'm looking at it right now, it's very shiny. So I'm just gonna take that off. Not bearing down very hard. It doesn't feel like it grabs very much at first. I think just because it is a polished surface. But after a little bit of this, you start to feel it like really grabbing. Now I can really feel it. And it's no longer shiny. Gotta be a little bit careful because these things are sharp. So I like to use a paper towel if I'm gonna wipe off the edge. So, so basically I'm just kinda, if you were to feel this right here, there's actually a burr on there right now. You can feel that, right?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, right? So that's just from using the mill file. We don't want that burr. We want our own special burr. So I'm just gonna take my, I always use the finest grit, or whatever you call it, on the diamond stone, just to clean off this surface. I'm just gonna just wipe that burr off like this. It's really as simple as that. Okay, so you can feel that's gone now.
Yep.
No burr no more.
Agree with you.
So I'm looking at this, and I'm just kind of like looking at the light bouncing off. It actually looks pretty good. It's nice and uniform. It's kind of gray because of the mill file. I've taken off that clean surface. Sometimes if I've really damaged that edge, you'll see lines reflecting on the corners here, and that means that there's still a little bit of the old burr left, basically, and it's kind of curved. There's a little nick right here, so I'm just going to take a few more swipes. Yeah, so it looks nice now, nice and uniform. So I'm just going to wipe that off again. Smooth. Now I'm just going to work the edge with this coarse diamond plate. I'm just going to freehand it. I don't need a fence for this. My eyes aren't really all that good. If I really wanted to, I would put another pair of reading glasses over these reading glasses, and I would look to see if I could see any mill marks from the mill file, but I'm not seeing it. I don't know if that's because they're not there or not, but I'm just gonna move on to the next grit. You can actually work in both directions if you want, whatever you feel comfortable with, pushing or pulling. Do you have one? Yeah, I don't use those for woodworking. And now I'm gonna go to the finest one, so I'm just gonna clean this off. And I can see it's getting pretty shiny now, so go over this again. Now, I've done this before. I'm not gonna say that it's always gonna work well. It really depends on how you can clamp it, but I've actually ganged a bunch of these up before and done a bunch of them all at the same time. You have to keep doing that consistently if you want that to work though, because if there's any curvature at all, you're gonna have to take off a lot of material off of one in order to make it match another one. But I've got a group of them here, and at least one of these edges on each of them, I was able to just gang them together in a vise and do them all at the same time. And in a way that makes it a little bit easier, obviously faster because you're doing them all at the same time, but it also gives you a wider surface to bearing surface. So I'm just gonna make sure this edge is nice and clean. Okay, and that's ready to go. I don't know if you can see in the light, but it's all very shiny, okay? And it looks, I don't see any nicks or anything, so it looks good. So ordinarily, I would go over to the other side and I would do the other side. But in this case, I'm just gonna go right to using the burnishing tool. So I generally will go straight first. I'm just gonna run this across horizontally. few times. And that already starts to bring a little bit of a burr, but now I'm gonna go at an angle. So they have, actually, at the auction, somebody bought and I put in a jig that Lee Valley makes that has a burnishing tool in it. We can set the angle and use the fence on here just kind of like this, and it does the burnishing at just the right angle. I finally got to the point where I was like, I'm just gonna do this freehand. So I don't think the angle is all that critical. What's critical is that you don't slice your finger. So I always hold the handle on the high side, and basically I kind of line it up so that when I make my pass, you know, I'm moving from this end to this end. So I'll kind of like angle it like this. I'll lift it up just a little bit. You can pull if you want, whatever you feel more comfortable with. That's that. That's all it takes. This side.
So you're putting a burr on both sides?
Yep. Yep, there's two edges, so you get twice as much for your money. That's it.
So if my understanding correct, you're basically making the tiniest little T-shape you could.
It's a very tiny little flare.
Yeah.
And that's the burr. If you can run your finger on there, you can feel it's just a little bit of a burr.
Yeah.
So generally, when you see people use these card scrapers, you'll see them pushing like this. Yeah, it's not bad. You should actually. There, so you're starting to get some shaving. That's actually what you want to see. You shouldn't really be just getting up dust. You should actually be taking up the shaving. And a lot of times, when you start first getting used to these, you tend to go over a little too far. You want it to be a little more upright because you want to engage that edge in the wood. I actually prefer to pull. That way, I can actually see what I'm doing. Because you do put a little bit of a bend in it, you tend to be using, you know, like just a portion of the edge, and you can move it around. So make sure you use the entire edge so you don't waste any of it.
Do you consider the grain at all, or do you just do it?
You know, yeah, you want to go with the grain if you can, but one of the nice things about the card scraper is that it doesn't really cause tear out. So, you know, you can kind of go in any direction that you need to, especially like here where you've got a knot. You know, I can come in, you know, like this from the edge in towards the center of the knot because the, you know, the grain is going to be rising, right? But grain direction is certainly not as important as when you're using a hand plane. You can really see what it's doing and bring out that grain. So I can see that there's a little bit of tear out right here from the hand planing. Another little trick that you tend to, like Bob Van Dyke brought to our attention, is if you take a little bit of sandpaper, I like to use these rolls of self-adhesive because they, because basically it just sticks to my finger. So now I can go like this. And if you just do a little bit of sanding like this, generally you can see the imperfections. There's a little bit of tear out right here. And so the dust kind of like collects in there, so you can kind of see it easier. And I'm working my way across the edge of this, so I'm using the whole thing. really want to get aggressive, you can bend it even more and really dig in. That's basically it.